Hi, I'm Peter J. Ray. Welcome. Today's topic is the 1914 Cleveland Naps AL MLB baseball season. Again, the Naps were playing in the American League, the junior circuit of Major League Baseball, and they're playing home games at League Park in Cleveland, Ohio. 1914 was a very tough year for the Cleveland Naps. They finished in 8th and last place with a record of 51 and 102. Winning percentage of .333, 48 and a half games out of first. The first place team in 1914 was the Philadelphia Athletics, who were 99 and 53. Second place, the Boston Red Sox, were 91 and 62. Third place, the Washington Senators, were 81 and 73. Fourth place, the Detroit Tigers, 80 and 73. Fifth place, the St. Louis Browns were 71 and 82. Sixth place, the Chicago White Sox were 70 and 84. Seventh place, the New York Yankees were also 70 and 84. And in eighth and last place, the Cleveland Naps were 51 and 102. Now the team had such a tough year. Attendance was way down in 1914. It was down 350,000 from the previous year. There was only a total of 185,997 for the entire year, or an average of 2,369 fans per game, which was the lowest in the American League. One of the things that really hurt the team was that Cy Falkenberg jumped to the Indianapolis Hoosiers in the Federal League, which was a new rival league, luring players away, and he won a title with them. So that was a big loss. He was our number 2 pitcher in the rotation. The Naps started the season 0-8, lost their first 8 games, and they were in last place all season. The owner, Charles Summers, was having financial problems from his own businesses in the coal industry and the fact that attendance was so low and revenues were way down. So he had to cut expenses. He did not draft any players from the minor leagues in 1914. He did what he could to reduce salaries. He reduced the number of scouts that he had, and he started trading the expensive players or selling them. Another player who jumped to the Federal League was George Collar. In August of 1914, the First World War started in Europe. It lasted from 1914 to 1918, although the United States did not join the war until 1917. On July 11th, 1914, a rookie pitcher for the Boston Red Sox pitched his first Major League Baseball game and defeated Cleveland 4-3. And his name was Babe Ruth, the beginning of the famous career of Babe Ruth, who became the most famous player in MLB history up until now. The manager for the 1914 Cleveland Naps was Joe Birmingham, who played some outfield. Birmingham batted .128. 6 hits and 47 at-bats. He scored twice, had 4 RBIs, struck out 5 times in 19 games. He had this to say: a number of Naps players were from the South, from states in the South, and naturally they would became friends with each other. And one day he saw they were all together in a group, talking, and Birmingham said this, quote, "That's a meeting of the Southern Confederacy, probably laughing at us for putting sugar in our cornbread," or something like that. "Did you know that my club ought to be called the Rebels, or the Survivals of the Lost Cause? It looks as if I'll have to get an interpreter." Joe Birmingham, tough year for him. He had more conflict again with Napoleon Lajoie. Joe Birmingham. Our starting catcher was Steve O'Neill, who batted .253, 68 hits, 12 doubles, 2 triples, 20 RBIs, a stolen base in 87 games. O'Neill played for Cleveland from 1911 to 1922 rather, and he was the Cleveland Indians manager from 1935 to 1937. Steve O'Neill. At first base, we had Doc Johnston, who batted .244 with 83 hits, 15 doubles, a triple, 23 RBIs, 14 stolen bases in 104 games. Johnston was with Cleveland from 1912 to 1914 and from 1918 to 1921. Napoleon Lajoie was at second base. Lajoie had a tough year. He batted only .258 with 108 hits, 14 doubles, 3 triples, 50 RBIs, 14 stolen bases in 121 games. Lajoie was with Cleveland from 1902 to 1914, and this was his last year in Cleveland. He got his 3,000th hit on September 27th. He's the Cleveland all-time hits leader with 2,046. After the season, he was sold to the Philadelphia Athletics. He became the third Major League Baseball player to have 3,000 hits, joining Honus Wagner and Cap Anson. And he said this, quote, "I still have one friend with me in the crowd. What friend? Who else but Mrs. Lajoie? I suppose she has busted a new pair of gloves. But she can use up a new pair every day if she wants to. She still thinks I am a great ball player, if nobody else does." The Sporting News reported this, quote, that Napoleon Lajoie's baseball star is setting. The records indicate Larry is slowing up. His age is against him. A younger man will have to be developed. Larry knows it and doubtless will help develop that young man. After he got his 3,000th hit against the Yankees stopped the game and gave Lajoie the ball, and the fans in Cleveland applauded Napoleon Lajoie. He had 2 more seasons as a player in the major leagues with the Philadelphia Athletics, and then he retired from the major leagues after the 1916 season. In 1914, the Philadelphia A's had made it to the World Series and were swept. However, Connie Mack was having financial problems, and he had to let a lot of star players go. On May 9, 1915, Napoleon Lajoie returned to Cleveland with the Philadelphia Athletics, and they had Napoleon Lajoie Day for him at League Park. Sports writer Ed Bang wrote, quote, "It seemed that a 42-centimeter gun had been turned loose." This is when Lajoie came to bat. "Every human in the big enclosure stood and cheered and applauded the idol for several minutes. It was a demonstration never seen here before, and one that will probably never be equaled in the days to come. Surely it will never be surpassed. They were there to pay homage to the king, who is regarded as a Cleveland landmark by practically every fan in the 6th city." Cleveland was called the 6th city back then. They had the 6th highest population in the U.S. Now, Philadelphia was finished in first in 1914, but then in 1915 they finished in last place. So this was kind of tough. Lajoie arrived. They went from first to last. They had a record of 43 and 109, 58 and a half games out of first. Connie Mack was rebuilding the team. And 1916 was Lajoie's last year as a player in the majors, and the Athletics were even worse. They finished 38 and 117. In 1917, Lajoie was the player manager for the Toronto Maple Leafs in the minor leagues in the International League. One funny game against Richmond, Virginia, a batter hit a ball which went up the sleeve of the Maple Leaf third baseman, George Whiteman, and the ball got stuck in his sleeve. And the hitter had an inside-the-park home run because Whiteman couldn't get the ball out in time. Toronto won the pennant. So finally, Napoleon Lajoie won a pennant, and they were the champions. There was no playoffs. He led the International League with a .380 average, so he was real happy about his 1917 season. In 1918, he was the player manager for the Indianapolis Indians, again in the minor leagues. Some of his players included former teammates Cy Falkenberg and Herman Bronke. On June 12th, there was a home run. A ball hit the left fielder Austin McHenry in his glove and rolled up his arm and fell over the fence. The season was suspended on July 21st, 1918, as all players, young men, were required to either join the armed forces or work in the defense industry during World War II. And the Indianapolis Indians finished third place, 3 games behind out of first. Lajoie hit .282, and this was his last year in baseball. He became a salesman for a tire company in Cleveland, and he said, quote, "There is no use of me saying that I could come back and be as good as I used to be, for I can't, and I am tired of getting in shape, and I think it's about time I should settle down in Cleveland for the entire year instead of merely the wintertime. Mrs. Lajoie wants me to quit. She has wanted me to do so for several years now, and now she finds me of the same opinion." In 1953, Lajoie said this, quote, "I guess you know what I think about. Frank Dwyer and the Chewing Tobacco, and Colonel Rogers and his $400, and the ball that Dode Chris hit that just landed foul, and 1,009 silver dollars tied around some roses. The things we talked about. Yes, it's been a long ride for a hack driver from Woonsocket, Rhode Island. He worked for the Miller Rubber Company in Cleveland as a tire salesman. He lived on his farm in South Euclid in the Cleveland area. In the 1920s, Napoleon Lajoie served on the Cleveland Boxing Commission. He was Republican candidate for sheriff for Cuyahoga County, but was defeated in the election. He attended Game 4 of the 1920 World Series at League Park, which was renamed Dunn Field, which the Indians won 5-1. Lajoie returned in 1921 for an old-timers game on June 29th and was joined by former teammates Cy Young, Bill Bradley, Terry Turner, Harry Bay, and Elmer Flick. In 1925, he and his wife Myrtle started going to Florida for the winter and playing golf. He's played a lot of golf down there, and he said, quote, "Why fool around? There's the ball, there's the hole. What else is there but to tap it in?" He'd spend his summers in Cleveland and winter in Florida. He would visit Woonsocket, Rhode Island in the summer to visit relatives. On July 31st, 1932, the Cleveland Municipal Stadium was opened, and Lajoie was there, along with Cy Young, Elmer Flick, and Tris Speaker. There were 80,234 fans, and the old League Park only had 9,000 capacity, so this was something. He would listen to Indians games on the radio, broadcast by former teammate Jack Graney. In 1940, he saw Bob Feller pitch and said, quote, "Pretty fast. That feller almost as fast as Walter Johnson. Fast in a dandy curve." He attended a 1934 old-timers game at age 60, and in 1937 was inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame. And he said this in his induction speech, quote, "Ladies and gentlemen, I am very glad to be here today and meet all the old-timers that you probably watch baseball, and some of the greatest men that ever walked on the ball field. And I am glad to have the honor to be here today and join with them. And I hope everybody enjoys it as I do, because I'm certainly having a great day. Thank you." In 1940, Lajoie said, quote, "I guess I could have played a few more years, but all of a sudden I got sick of trains, of bats, of fences, tired of everything, that I quit. Somehow the past is all a dream, and I'd like to keep it that way." In the 1920s, he and his wife moved from their farm in South Euclid to a smaller house in Mentor, Ohio, also in the Cleveland area. In 1943, he and Myrtle moved to Daytona Beach, Florida. In 1942, he visited Joe Jackson in Greenville, South Carolina, to wish Jackson a happy 54th birthday. In 1954, his wife Myrtle died at age 78, and then two nieces came to take care of him. And he said, quote, "They take care of me like they would a baby. They're worth their weight in gold. I'm mighty lucky to have them with me." The Cleveland Indians had a minor league training camp in Daytona Beach, Florida, and they had a Nap Lajoie field there. And there was one final Napoleon Lajoie day, an exhibition game between the Cleveland Indians and the New York Giants in April of 1957. And Lajoie threw out the first pitch. There was a party and a presentation. His niece Lillian said, quote, "He was tired but so happy. We talked about that game and the party for weeks afterward." In his 80s, he watched Major League Baseball games on television and would attend Little League Baseball games in the area and sign autographs. In February 1958, Lajoie tripped over his dog and broke his arm. He died on February 7, 1959, at age 84. He died peacefully, and his funeral was at his funeral. There were Little League baseball players who were honorary pallbearers at St. Paul's Catholic Church in Daytona Beach, Florida, and he was buried in Cedar Hill Cemetery, I believe here in Cleveland. Napoleon Lajoie, God bless him. Our shortstop in 1914 was Ray Chapman. Chapman batted .275 with 103 hits, 16 doubles, 10 triples, 2 home runs, 42 RBIs, 24 stolen bases in 106 games. Chapman was with Cleveland from 1912 to 1920. In spring training, he had a broken leg sliding into a base and missed considerable playing time. Ray Chapman. Terry Turner was at third base. Turner batted .245 with 105 hits, 14 doubles, 9 triples, a home run, 33 RBIs, 17 stolen bases in 121 games. And Turner was with Cleveland from 1904 to 1918. Shoeless Joe Jackson was our right fielder in 1914. Jackson batted .338 with 153 hits, 22 doubles, 13 triples, 3 home runs, 53 RBIs, 22 stolen bases in 122 games. Jackson was with Cleveland from 1910 to 1915. His .338 batting average was fourth in the league behind the leader Ty Cobb won his 8th straight batting title. There were a lot of Southerners on the Naps, including Joe Jackson and Doc Johnston from Tennessee, Willie Mitchell from Mississippi, Ray Chapman from Kentucky, and Nick Cullup from Virginia. They were called the Rebs. Jackson enjoyed spending time with Doc Johnston and Nick Cullup, teammates who were Southerners. He was offered a contract to play in the Federal League, and he said, quote, "I hardly considered the offer made me by the Federal League, although $65,000 for 3 seasons is much in advance of the sum I am to receive from Cleveland. President Summers, as well as other officials of the club, have been kind to me, and I would rather play with that club than any other in the big leagues." His 1914 salary was $16,000 over 3 years, including a $2,500 bonus and $4,500 per year. His father died before the season. Shoeless Joe Jackson. Jack Graney was the left fielder. Graney batted .265 with 122 hits, 17 doubles, 10 triples, a home run, 39 RBIs, 20 stolen bases in 130 games. And Graney was with Cleveland from 1908 and then 1910 to 1922 and was the Cleveland Indians radio broadcaster from 1932 to 1953. Jack Graney. Nemo Leibold was the center fielder. Leibold batted .264 with 106 hits, 13 doubles, 3 triples, 32 RBIs, 12 stolen bases in 115 games. And Leibold was with Cleveland from 1913 to 1915. Nemo Leibold. Ivy Olson played some infield. Olson batted .242 with 75 hits, 6 doubles, 2 triples, a home run, 20 RBIs, 15 stolen bases in 89 games. Olson was with Cleveland from 1911 to 1914, so this was the end of his time in Cleveland. However, he continued in the major leagues until 1924. Ivy Olson. Jay Kirk was a utility player. Kirk batted .273 with 66 hits, 10 doubles, 2 triples, a home run, 25 RBIs, 5 stolen bases in 67 games. Kirk was from Fleischmann's, New York. He died in New Orleans, Louisiana in 1968 at age 80. A career average of .301 with 7 home runs and 148 RBIs. Kirk played for the Detroit Tigers, Boston Rustlers, Boston Braves, Cleveland Naps, Cleveland Indians, and New York Giants between 1910 and 1918. Jay Kirk. Roy Wood was another utility player. Wood batted .236 with 52 hits, 6 doubles, 3 triples, a home run, 15 RBIs, 6 stolen bases in 72 games. Wood was from Monticello, Arkansas. He died in Fayetteville, Arkansas in 1974 at age 81. Career average of .231 with 1 home run and 20 RBIs. Wood played for the Pittsburgh Pirates, Cleveland Naps, and Cleveland Indians between 1913 and 1915. They called him Woody. He went to the University of Arkansas. In the minor leagues, he played for the Sioux City Packers and the Toledo Ironmen. Roy Wood. Bill Wambsganss played some shortstop. Wambsganss batted .217 with 31 hits, 6 doubles, 2 triples, 12 RBIs, 2 stolen bases in 43 games. Wambsganss was from Cleveland, Ohio. He died in Lakewood, Ohio in 1985 at age 91. A career average of .259 with 7 home runs and 521 RBIs. Wambsganss played for the Cleveland Naps, Cleveland Indians, Boston Red Sox, and Philadelphia Athletics between 1914 and 1926, so he was a rookie in 1914. He won a World Series in 1920 with the Cleveland Indians, had an unassisted triple play in the 1920 World Series. He was of German descent. Wambsganss went to Concordia College and was studied for the ministry before his pro baseball career. In Game 5 of the 1920 World Series, in the fifth inning, Clarence Knight hit a line drive, which Wambsganss caught. Then he stepped on second to retire Pete Kilduff, then tagged Otto Miller, the only unassisted triple play in World Series history. The same game, Elmer Smith for Cleveland hit the first Grand Slam home run in World Series history, and Jim Bagby, the pitcher, hit a home run for Cleveland, the first pitcher to hit a home run in modern World Series history. After the series, fans presented Wambsganss with a medal commemorating his triple play. However, the medal was lost in 1921 when Wambsganss was traveling on a train. He was a manager for 4 years in the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League for the Fort Wayne Daisies and the Muskegon Lassies. There's a gym at Concordia Theological Seminary named after him. Excuse me. In the 1960s, he gave an interview for the book The Glory of Their Times, and he said this, quote, "Funny thing, I played in the big leagues for 13 years, 1914 through 1926, and the only thing that anybody seems to remember is that I once made an unassisted triple play in the World Series. Many don't even remember the team I was on or the position. I played or anything. Just Wambsganss, triple play. You'd think I was born on the day before and died on the day after." Wambsganss died of a heart failure in 1985 at age 91, was buried at Calvary Cemetery in Cleveland. In the 1958 movie, Teacher's Pet with Clark Gable and Jidge Young argue whether Wambsganss' triple play took place in 1920 or the 1921 World Series. Wambsganss said this, quote, "Actually, more people probably know me as Bill Wamby than as Bill Wambsganss. Wamby fits in a box score easier, so that's how it usually was reported." His father was a Lutheran minister, and Wambsganss was expected to follow in his footsteps. However, at Concordia College in Fort Wayne, Indiana, he remembered, quote, "In the first place, once I got to playing on the college baseball team, all I did was sit in the classroom and look out the window, wishing that class was over, so I could go out and play ball. I just dreaded telling my father. I didn't want to be a minister. However, he went to divinity school in St. Louis, and then said, remember this, quote, "The good Lord must have taken pity on me." A classmate had played pro baseball, and a manager for the Cedar Rapids team wrote and asked for a recommendation for a shortstop, and this fellow recommended Wambsganss. So in 1913, he played for Cedar Rapids that summer, and then in the fall was back in the seminary. In 1914, Cedar Rapids sold him to Cleveland for $1,250. His father supported his decision to play pro baseball. Wambsganss remembered, quote, "I'll tell you one thing, it surely took a burden off my mind. I felt as though a 1,000-ton load had been taken off my back. I have a sneaking feeling that what really did it was that I was going to play for Cleveland. Dad had always been a Cleveland fan, especially a Larry Lajoie fan. I'm still not sure what he would have said if I'd been sold to the Detroit Tigers." Ring Lardner, a sports writer, wrote this limerick, quote, "The Naps bought a shortstop named Wambsganss, who is slated to fill Ray Chapman's pants. But when he saw Ray and the way he could play, he muttered, 'I haven't a clam's chance.'" Now, Terry Turner, teammate, gave him some advice about Ty. He said when Ty Cobb would grit his teeth, that meant he was going to bunt down the third base line. One game, Cobb gritted his teeth, and Wambsganss came close toward the plate, and then there was a line drive hit by Cobb, and Wambsganss said, quote, "Cobb swung with all his might and slammed one down at me a mile a minute, so hard I thought it would take my head right off my shoulders. I threw my hand to protect myself, and by sheer accident, the ball stuck right in my glove. Whew! After that, I let Terry Turner keep his advice to himself." Bill Wambsganss. Spare catcher was Fred Carisch. Carisch batted .216 with 22 hits, 3 doubles, 2 triples, 5 home runs, 2 stolen bases in 40 games. Carisch was with Cleveland from 1912 to 1914. So this was the end of his time in Cleveland and the end of his Major League Baseball career. However, in 1923, as a coach with the Tigers, he got in 1 game. Fred Carisch. Ben Egan was another catcher. Egan batted .227 with 20 hits, 2 doubles, a triple, 11 RBIs in 29 games. Egan was from Augusta, New York. He died in Sherrill, New York in 1968 at age 84. Career average of 165 with 30 RBIs. Egan played for the Philadelphia Athletics in 1908 and 1912, and then with the Cleveland Naps and Cleveland Indians between 1914 and 1915. He was the coach for the Brooklyn Dodgers in 1925 and the Chicago White Sox in 1926. Ben Egan. Johnny Basler was another catcher. Basler batted 182 with 14 hits and 77 at-bats, a double, a triple, 6 RBIs, 3 stolen bases in 43 games. Basler was with Cleveland from 1913 to 1914, so this was the end of his time in Cleveland. However, he continued in the major leagues until 1927. Johnny Basler. Larry Pez played some third base. Pez batted .225 with 16 hits and 71 at-bats, a triple, 5 RBIs, 2 stolen bases in 23 games. Pez was from New Orleans, Louisiana. He died in Baton Rouge, Louisiana in 1957 at age 64. He played for the Cleveland Naps in 1914, so this was the extent of his MLB career. In the minor leagues, he played for the Gadsden Steelmakers and the Ironton Nailers and the New Orleans Pelicans. Larry Pez. Jack Lelivelt played some outfield. Lelivelt batted .328 with 21 hits and 64 at-bats, 5 doubles, a triple, 13 RBIs, 2 stolen bases in 34 games. Lelivelt was with Cleveland from 1913 to 1914. This was the end of his MLB career. However, he continued in the minor leagues until 1925. Jack Lelivelt. Rivington Bislan played some shortstop. Bislan batted .105 with 6 hits and 57 at-bats, a double, 2 RBIs, 2 stolen bases in 18 games. Bisland was from New York, New York. He died in Salzburg, Austria, Europe in 1973 at age 82. Career average of 118 with 5 RBIs. Bisland played for the Pittsburgh Pirates, St. Louis Browns, and Cleveland Naps between 1912 and 1914. So this was the end of his MLB career. He was the very definition of a good field no-hit player. In the minor leagues, he played for the Wheeling Stogies, the Springfield Reapers, and the Atlantic Crackers. Rivington Bisland. Walter Barbare played some third base and shortstop. Barbare batted .308 with 16 hits and 52 at-bats, 2 doubles, 2 triples, 5 RBIs, a stolen base in 15 games. Barbare was from Greenville, South Carolina. He died in Greenville in 1965 at age 74. Career average of .260 with 1 home run and 156 RBIs. Barbare played for the Cleveland Naps, Boston Red Sox, Pittsburgh Pirates, and Boston Braves between 1914 and 1922. He was a solid infielder with a strong arm and a light bat. After he retired, he was a manager and umpire in the minor leagues. In the minors, for the Greenville Spinners, the Asheville Mountaineers, the Little Rock Travelers, the Jersey City Skeeters, and the Memphis Chickasaws. Walter Barbare. Elmer Smith played some outfield. Smith batted .321 with 17 hits, 53 at-bats, 3 doubles, 8 RBIs, a stolen base in 13 games. Smith was from Sandusky, Ohio. He died in Columbia, Kentucky in 1984 at age 91. Career average of .276 with 70 home runs and 541 RBIs. Smith played for the Cleveland Naps, Cleveland Indians, Washington Senators, Boston Red Sox, New York Yankees, and Cincinnati Reds between 1914 and 1925. He won World Series titles with the 1920 Cleveland Indians and the 1923 New York Yankees, and he hit the first Grand Slam in World Series history. Elmer Smith. Bruce Hartford played some shortstop. Hartford batted .182 with 4 hits and 22 at-bats, a double, walked 4 times, struck out 9 times in 8 games. Hartford was from Chicago, Illinois. He died in Los Angeles, California in 1975 at age 83. He played for the Cleveland Naps in 1914, and then in the minor leagues he played for the Terre Haute Miners, the Bloomington Bloomers, the Birmingham Barons, Chattanooga Lookouts, and the Des Moines Boosters. Bruce Hartford. Frank Mills was a catcher, batted .125 with 1 hit and 8 at-bats. He walked once, struck out twice in 4 games. Mills was from Knoxville, Ohio. He died in Youngstown, Ohio in 1983 at age 88. Played for the Cleveland Naps in 1914, so that was the extent of his MLB career. In the minor leagues, he played for the Atlanta Crackers. Frank Mills. Josh Billings was another catcher. Billings batted .250 with 2 hits and 8 at-bats, scored 3 times, had a double, a stolen base in 11 games. Billings was with Cleveland from 1913 to 1918. Josh Billings. George Dunlop played some shortstop. He batted 3 times, did not have a hit, walked once, struck out once in 1 game. Dunlop played with Cleveland from 1913 to 1914, and this was the end of his MLB career. George Dunlop. Tom Riley played some shortstop. Riley got in 1 game, batted once, did not have a hit. Riley was from St. Louis, Missouri. He died in New Orleans, Louisiana in 1918 at age 34. A career average of 180 with 1 home run and 5 RBIs. Riley played for the St. Louis Cardinals from 1908 to 1909 and the Cleveland Naps in 1914. This was the end of his MLB career. In the minor leagues, he played for the Gulfport Crabs, the Louisville Colonels, and the Sioux City Packers. Tom Riley. Tinsley Ginn played some outfield. He got in 2 games, batted once, did not have a hit. Ginn was from Royston, Georgia. He died in Atlanta, Georgia in 1931 at age 39. His MLB career was just with the Cleveland Naps in 1914, and he went to the University of Georgia. Tinsley Ginn. Al Cypher played some third base. He got in 1 game, batted once, did not have a hit. He struck out that one time. Cypher was from Little Rock, Arkansas. He died in Washington, D.C. in 1973 at age 83. Played for the Cleveland Naps in 1914, so this was the extent of his MLB career. Cypher was a Democratic Party politician and a business manager. At the University of Arkansas, he was with the baseball and football teams, managers. He went to Harvard Law School, became the district attorney for Little Rock, Arkansas. In 1931, he ran and was defeated in the race for Arkansas Attorney General. He was the business manager at the University of Arkansas Athletic Department. In 1928, Cypher prosecuted Charles Smith, who was head of the Advancement of Atheism organization, for distributing pamphlets, which wrote this, quote, "Evolution is true, the Bible is a lie, God is a ghost." He was prosecuted on blasphemy charges. Al Cypher. Now the pitching staff, Willie Mitchell batted .086 with 7 hits and 81 at-bats, scored 5 times, had a double, 4 RBIs in 39 games. Mitchell's pitching record was 11-17 with an ERA of 3.19, 39 games, 32 starts, 16 complete games, 3 shutouts and a save, and Mitchell was with Cleveland from 1909 to 1916. Bill Steen was another pitcher in the rotation. Steen batted .200, 14 hits and 70 at-bats, scored 4 times, 2 doubles, 5 RBIs. He struck out 26 times in 30 games. Steen's pitching record was 9-14 with an ERA of 2.60, 30 games, 22 starts, 13 complete games and a shutout. And Steen was with Cleveland from 1912 to 1915. Bill Steen. Rip Hagerman was another starting pitcher. Hagerman batted .016 with 1 hit and 61 at-bats. Scored twice, walked 4 times, struck out 41 times in 37 games. His pitching record was 9-15 with an ERA of 3.09, 37 games, 26 starts, 12 complete games, and 3 shutouts. Hagerman was from Linden, Kansas. He died in Albuquerque, New Mexico in 1930 at age 43. A career record of 19-33 with an ERA of 3.09 and 214 strikeouts. Hagerman pitched for the Chicago Cubs in 1909, the Cleveland Naps, and Cleveland Indians between 1914 and 1916, and in the minor leagues for the Lincoln Rail Splitters, the Portland Beavers, and the St. Paul Saints. Rip Hagerman. Fred Blanding was another pitcher. Blanding batted .103 with 4 hits and 39 at-bats, scored twice, had a triple, an RBI, and struck out 10 times. His pitching record was 4-9 with an ERA of 3.96, 29 games, 12 starts, 5 complete games. Blanding was with Cleveland from 1910 to 1914, and this was the end of his MLB career. Fred Blanding. Veen Gregg was another pitcher. Gregg batted .176 with 6 hits and 34 at-bats, scored 5 times, 2 doubles, an RBI in 17 games. Gregg's pitching record was 9-3 with an ERA of 3.07, 17 games, 12 starts, 6 complete games, and a shutout. Gregg was with Cleveland from 1911 to 1914. He continued in the major leagues until 1925. Cleveland traded Gregg to the Red Sox in August because of his expensive salary, and he was part of the anti-Joe Birmingham faction. Being Gregg. Guy Morton was another starting pitcher. Morton batted .029 with 1 hit and 35 at-bats, struck out 10 times in 25 games. Morton's pitching record was 1-13 with an ERA of 3.02, 25 games, 13 starts, 5 complete games, and a shutout. Morton was from Vernon, Alabama. He died in Sheffield, Alabama in 1934 at age 41. His career record was 98-88 with an ERA of 3.13 and 830 strikeouts. Morton pitched for the Cleveland Naps and Cleveland Indians between 1914 and 1924, so his 11-year career was all with Cleveland. On June 11, 1916, he tied an MLB record with 4 strikeouts in 1 inning. He led the American League in strikeouts for 9 innings pitched in 1918 and 1922, and he was selected as one of the top 100 Cleveland Indians of all time. They called him Moose, and his son, Guy Jr., also was an MLB player in 1954 with the Boston Red Sox and struck out in his only MLB at-bat. Morton set a record by losing his first 13 decisions in the majors before finally winning a game, so he was 0-13 for his MLB start. Guy Morton. Alan Collimore was another pitcher. Collimore batted .094 with 3 hits and 32 at-bats. He scored a run, struck out 7 times in 27 games. Collimore's record was 3-7 with an ERA of 3.25, 27 games, 8 starts, and 3 complete games. Collimore was from Worcester, Massachusetts. He died in Battle Creek, Michigan in 1980 at age 93. Career record of 5-13 with an ERA of 3.30 and 48 strikeouts. Collimore pitched for the Philadelphia Athletics in 1911 and the Cleveland Naps and Cleveland Indians in 1914 and 1915. In the minor leagues, he pitched for the Worcester Busters, the Toledo Mud Hens, the Cleveland Bearcats, and the Cleveland Spiders. Alan Collimore. Fritz Kuhn was another pitcher. Kuhn batted .261 with 6 hits and 23 at-bats. He scored a run, had a triple, 3 RBIs, a stolen base in 14 games. Kuhn's pitching record was 1-5 with an ERA of 3.25, 14 games, 5 starts, and 2 complete games. Kuhn was from Antrim, Pennsylvania. He died in Paradise, California in 1978 at age 88. A career record of 38-38 with an ERA of 2.80 and 212 strikeouts. Kuhn pitched for the Boston Red Sox, Cleveland Naps, Cleveland Indians, and Cincinnati Reds between 1914 and 1921. So this was his rookie year. He played in the last MLB triple header on October 2, 1920. 3 games in 1 day. The Cincinnati Reds won 2 and the Pittsburgh Pirates won 1. After his MLB career, he had 10 years in the minor leagues. For the Salt Lake City Bees for 3 years, also the Mobile Bears, the Baltimore Orioles, and the Elmira Cardinals. Fritz Kuhn. Abe Bowman was another pitcher. Bowman batted .048 with 1 hit and 21 at-bats, struck out 8 times in 22 games. Bowman's pitching record was 2-7 with an ERA of 4.46 in 22 games, 10 starts, 2 complete games, and a shutout. Bowman was from Greenup, Illinois. He died in Longview, Texas in 1979 at age 86. Career record of 2-8 with an ERA of 4.74 and 27 strikeouts. Bowman pitched for the Cleveland Naps and Cleveland Indians in 1914 and 1915. He was the manager in the minor leagues from 1927 to 1933 for the Muskegon Speeders. He also played for the Mexica Gushers, the Longview Cannibals, the Sulphur Springs Spartans, the Wichita Jobbers, and the Nashville Vols. Abe Bowman. Lefty James was another pitcher. James batted 12 times, did not have a hit, walked twice, had struck out 9 times, scored a run in 17 games. James' pitching record was 0-3 with an ERA of 3.20, 17 games, 6 starts, and a complete game. James pitched for Cleveland from 1912 to 1914. This was the end of his MLB career. He also pitched in the minor leagues for the San Antonio Broncos and the Beaumont Exporters. Lefty James. Harley Dillinger was another pitcher. Dillinger batted 10 times, did not have a hit, struck out 6 times in 11 games. Dillinger's pitching record was 0-1 with an ERA of 4.54, 11 games, 2 starts, and a complete game. Dillinger was from Pomeroy, Ohio. He died in Cleveland, Ohio in 1959 at age 64. His MLB career was just with the Cleveland Naps in 1914. They called him Hoke. He went to the University of Rio Grande. He was the manager in the minor leagues for the Paducah Indians and the Kentucky, Illinois, and Tennessee League, and also he played in the minor leagues for the London Tecumsehs and Fort Worth Panthers. Harley Dillinger. Paul Carter was another pitcher. Carter batted 7 times, did not have a hit, struck out 4 times in 5 games. Carter's pitching record was 1-3, with an ERA of 2.92, 5 games, 4 starts, and a complete game. Carter was from Lake Park, Georgia. He died in Lake Park in 1984 at age 90. Career record of 20-26 with an ERA of 3.32 and 115 strikeouts. Carter pitched for the Cleveland Naps, Cleveland Indians, and Chicago Cubs between 1914 and 1920. They called him Nick. Paul Carter. Al Tedrow was another pitcher. Tedrow batted 167 with 1 hit and 6 at-bats. He scored a run, had an RBI in 4 games. Tedrow's pitching record was 1-2 with an ERA of 1.21, 4 games, 3 starts, and a complete game. Tedrow is from Westerville, Ohio. He died in Westerville in 1958 at age 66. His MLB career was just with the Cleveland Naps in 1914. In the minor leagues, he pitched for the Akron Champs, the Ironton Nailers, the Lexington Colts, and the Portsmouth Cobblers. Al Tedrow. George Collar was another pitcher. Collar batted 5 times, did not have a hit, walked once, struck out 3 times, scored a run in 2 games. Collar's pitching record was 0-1 with an ERA of 3.86, 2 games, a start, and a complete game. Collar was with Cleveland from 1910 to 1914, so this was the end of his MLB career. However, he continued in the minor leagues till 1917 with the Lima Cigar Makers, the Los Angeles Angels, and the Milwaukee Brewers. George Collar. Sad Sam Jones was another pitcher. Jones batted 500, had 1 hit and 2 at-bats, struck out once in 1 game. As a pitcher, he had no decisions and an ERA of 2.70, 1 game, and pitched 3 1/3 innings. Jones was from Woodsfield, Ohio. He died in Barnesville, Ohio in 1966 at age 73. For his career, he won 229 games, lost 217 with an ERA of 3.84 and 1,223 strikeouts. Jones pitched for the Cleveland Naps, Cleveland Indians, Boston Red Sox, New York Yankees, St. Louis Browns, Washington Senators, and Chicago White Sox between 1914 and 1935, so this was his rookie year in a 21-year career. Jones won World Series titles in 1918 with the Red Sox and 1923 with the Yankees. He threw a no-hitter in 1923. They called him Horsewhip Sam. In 1923, he was the ace for the New York Yankees and led them to their first World Series title. In 1922, he led the American League in saves with 8 while also being a starting pitcher. Bill McGeehan of the New York Herald Tribune dubbed him Sad Sam because he said that Jones looked downcast on the field. Jones said this, quote, "I would always wear my cap down real low over my eyes, and the sports writers were more used to fellows like Wade Hoyt, who'd always wear their caps way up so they wouldn't miss any pretty girls. You know, I think one reason I pitched so long is that I never wasted my arm throwing over to first to keep runners close to the base. What you do instead of throwing is look at the guy on first. Yeah, that's all. No need to throw. If you stand there and just stare at him long enough, it'll get to be too much for him and he'll lean toward the base. Then you pitch." I broke into the American League in 1914 in Cleveland. I'll never forget the fellows on that Cleveland club. Joe Jackson, Ray Chapman, Steve O'Neill, Terry Turner, Larry Lajoie, Willie Mitchell. I'll never forget how nice those fellows treated me when I first came up. They were just wonderful. Of course, wherever I was, I always made friends easy. Every club I was on, everybody and me was friends. But this was different, being a rookie and all. Just a big country boy out of the hills here, and they made me feel right at home. You sure do remember that, someone being so nice to you when you're just starting out. Sad Sam Jones. Lloyd Bishop was another pitcher. Bishop batted twice, did not have a hit in 3 games. His pitching record was 0-1 with an ERA of 5.63, 3 games, and 1 start. Bishop was from Conway Springs, Kansas. He died in Wichita, Kansas in 1968 at age 78. pitched for the Cleveland Naps in 1914, and he was also on the Wichita State Shockers baseball team. Lloyd Bishop. Nick Cullop was another pitcher. Cullop batted once, did not have a hit in one game. Pitching record was 0-1 with an ERA of 2.70, one game and 3 1/3 innings pitched. Cullop was with Cleveland in 1913 and 1914. He continued in the minor leagues until 1921. Southern players were offended by the name the Federal League, this new rival league, however, and Cullop said, quote, "We don't belong to the Federals, no sir." However, he jumped to the Federal League in May. Nick Cullop. Henry Benn was another pitcher. Ben got in one game, did not bat, had no decisions and an ERA of 0.00 in that one game. He pitched one inning. Ben was from Viola, Wisconsin. He died in Madison, Wisconsin in 1967 at age 77. His MLB career was just with the Cleveland Naps in 1914. The minor leagues, he played for the Manistee Colts, the Toledo Mud Hens, Cleveland Bearcats, New Orleans Pelicans, and Cleveland Spiders. Henry Benn. And finally, George Beck got in one game, did not bat, had no decisions, an ERA of 0.00, pitched one game, one inning pitched, did not allow a run. Beck was from South Bend, Indiana. He died in South Bend in 1973 at age 83. His MLB career was just with the Cleveland Naps in 1914. In the minor leagues, he pitched for the Nashville Vols, the Cleveland Bearcats, and the New Orleans Pelicans. George Beck. In the World Series, the Philadelphia Athletics, the American League champions, appeared. They were defeated by the Boston Braves in a 4-game sweep. They were called the Miracle Braves. The Boston Braves on July 4th, 1914, were in last place. And then they ended up winning the National League pennant by 10.5 games and then winning the World Series. The A's had the famous owner-manager Connie Mack and Chief Bender, Eddie Collins, Herb Penock, and Eddie Plank, and the Braves had Johnny Evers and Rabbit Moranville. So that's the story of the 1914 Cleveland Naps. Tough year, but God bless the fellows who played for the Cleveland Naps in 1914 and everyone else associated with the team, including the fans, especially the Civil War veterans and the Spanish-American War veterans. Captains of the Cuyahoga, lovers of Lake Erie, Terminal Tower Power, fans of the Free Stamp Statue and the Fountain of Eternal Life. Euclid Avenue Electricity, First Energy Stadium Friends, Progressive Field Pals, Quicken Loans Arena Enthusiasts, Severance Hall Stalwarts, Tribe, Browns, Cavs, Monsters, and Gladiators rule. Cleveland, City of Champions. Cleveland is the best location in the nation on the north coast of America. New York is the Big Apple. Cleveland is a plum. It's been 70 years since 1948. This is our year. Go Tribe. Thank you so much for watching. I really, really appreciate it. God bless you. Take care, and I'll see you next time.